I'm one of the few Māoris who can't sing and dance, so don't expect a waiata. Yeah, so I took to managing my cousins so I could too also attract the female attention that they were. Yeah, I was really happy when MC Hammer brought out the Running Man craze, because all you had to do was run on the spot. So today I'm presenting, sharing a bit of our story, Ngāti Whatua Orakei's, with you. Many of you are probably well aware of the things we've done in social housing, and around biodiversity, trying to restore Kahu Bay, our zero waste activities at our Waitangi Day festivals, but probably less known is about our customary economy, how that was, I guess, shattered, and our rebirth and what it kind of looks like today. And we're at a very exciting time as Ngāti Whatua Orakei. We're on the cusp really of being able to make profound and deep changes in the lives of our people through the rebuilding of our economy. So I know people, money isn't everything, but we all know mā te huru huru, ka rere te manu. Yeah, the bird flies through having its feathers. I te tuatahi hoki me huri a ngā mihi kia koe te matua Fred, mō tō karakia ngā mihi hei whakawāte ai tēnei hui, ki te koro matua, kua hi ia, engari, haere, kia koutou, tēnā koutou. So I wanted to talk about our customary JAFA economy. So we look at we're the original JAFAs, and we take pride in that, and I'll explain a bit about that later. But we'll also go through the destruction of the economy through the process of colonisation and the settlement here of Auckland and its impact on us. Talk about our rebirth economically and culturally, and then redefining, I guess, the word JAFA to include a WH there. Ngāti Whatua. So the original JAFAs, we say we are, and why? Because everyone's envious of this place, Tāmaki Makaurau. It's reflected in the name. It's the place that everybody wants and everyone fights over, and as Suhu would say, it's the bride sought by 100 suitors. We obviously have great natural resources here, and Matua Fred referred to the three harbours, Kaipara, Manukau and the Waitemata. And we had a strong political system here amongst the tribes. You probably only hear about all the fights that we have, but really we, over the generations, we have at times been able to pull together and work together and really get the economy going here in Auckland and sharing in its wealth. Being able to work the resources of this land, it really set up Auckland from day one to be the major centre of population. So we've always had lots of people here from day one. So we've got 1.4 million. Auckland has always been the centre of Māori population from the very first people that arrived from the Pacific Islands. So we were confident, our people. We were materially wealthy. We wore the flash dogskin cloaks, which I guess was the Gucci of the day. We had very well developed arts. Our carvings were very, very well developed. Reverend Samuel Marsden in the 1820s with Captain Cruz went up the Tāmaki River and looked at Ngāti Paua's 2 kilometre long village along the river, along the banks of the Tāmaki River. And he described the carvings there as the most ornate he had seen throughout the country. And when you fast forward to late 1960s, when our people went to carve our meeting house, our carvers went, "Oh, what do we carve? We don't know." So we'd lost our ability, our artistic memory. So the economy here in Auckland led to sayings like te pai me te whairawa, te pai me te whairawa o Tāmaki, which basically means those flash marries in Auckland. And the centre of the great dynasties, the Waiōhua dynasty, later being replaced by Te Tau Ngāhotu Uringotu dynasty on the slopes of One Tree Hill, Maunga Kiakia. At its economic height, that mountain housed 5,000 people on its slopes, sculpted into the slopes of the mountain. You can see basically it's a beautiful piece of landscape architecture, that mountain, how our ancestors carved themselves into its sides, and you can see the garden walls there down by the archery club still showing through. So 5,000 people living there. Our economic cycle looked something like this. This is a map that we had made up based on 700 pages of native land court minutes, and it just shows base camps, satellite coastal fishing villages dotted around the Waitemata and the Manukau Harbour, and different seasonal movements to go and harvest shark and snapper, and pig runs actually running through to the Waitakeres as well, and all of the shellfish. So it shows a very sophisticated system of using the resources of the Auckland Isthmus. Two early JAFAS here are my ancestors, Api Haitakawa, who's seated there, and one I directly descend from, my great-grandfather's great-grandfather, Te Rewiti, standing holding the taiaha with a full head of hair, which I hope I will inherit as I get older. Under their leadership, they enticed Governor Hobson. We pinched him off the Ngāpuhi in the north and brought him to Auckland as our Pākehā Māori, and as our chiefs would say, to sit him on our knees. And in doing so, they gifted this first block of land here, which enabled the settlement and the development of this super city, Auckland. That 3,000 acres goes from the summit of Maunga Whau, Mount Eden, out west to Ōpautukeha, which is Cox's Bay, and east to Mataharehare, which is the bottom of Brighton Road, Eyre Street, Newmarket. Actually, we got done out of 500 acres on day one. The boundary was a bit further west than that. It was meant to be over at Parnell Baths when our chiefs walked the boundaries. So we got diddled from day one. But Pākehā did come, and we wanted them here. We wanted to share our wealth, and we wanted some of their wealth as well. And an example of the economic power of the tribes of the Auckland region, of the Hauraki and of the Waikato was put on show here at a major event called the Remuera Feast. It was in 1844, and it was just in the shadows of Mount Hobson and Mount St John, where for over a week the tribes of the Waikato region and also Kaipara and Auckland partied for a week, really. A big hakari, a big feast. There were 9,000 sharks that were presented, 11,000 baskets of potatoes and kumara, and about a kilometre long row of blankets that were gifted to all the different people who participated in the event. But it was really to show the new governor that Māori meant business. We expected more than drunken sailors turning up that Hobson brought, and Fitzroy, who came to this event, the strategy was to show him that Māori meant business and wanted to be a part of this town. The trade in early Auckland from the 1840s right through to the late 1850s, Māori dominated the port. This is a photo of Waipapa, which is an old village at Beach Road, Junction Parnell. So Beach Road is called Beach Road because it was a beach. And there's the wakas that used to bring all of the produce from the Waikato as far as Ngāti Whatua and the Kaipara as well. So Māori dominated this first port of Auckland, and basically it was because we still farmed and worked as a community, and so our labour costs were almost zero. So every time a settler orchardist or farmer would set the price for peaches. Māori would just undercut it, and then they'd set it, and they would keep undercutting it. These were probably boom times for our people, the last boom times, from the 1840s through to the 1850s, end of the 1850s. But the records show that the last wakas coming into Waipapa were about 1859, as the settlers refused to trade with the locals, dealing only with themselves and refusing to learn our language and so on. This is an example of the cultural wealth of our people, the beautiful art that they could produce. That's a taurapa or a bow of a waka. So things really changed in this period. The 1860s through to 1978 is a period where our trade ended with Pākehā. It was ended by war. The Waikato was invaded. For our people, Ngāti Whatua at Orakei, we were put under curfew and told we weren't allowed to leave our village at night. And if we came into the city, we had to wear a red chevron sash around the arms to identify ourselves as friendly Māori. So half of our people just packed up and went and picked up a gun with our Waikato relations, and the other half stayed maintaining the home fires and a relationship with the governors. But by 1952, our tribe in Auckland here was landless, except for a quarter acre of a cemetery, which the former Auckland Council resolved unanimously to take as well, but in the end they backed out of it. So this obviously having absolutely no land except for a burial site, the cemetery at Ōkahu Bay, obviously had a massive impact on our people, socially, culturally, spiritually, and obviously economically, and it led to the near collapse of our tribe. So Hugh Kāwharu termed it a cultural genocide. I know that's a very strong term, but that's a term that he openly used, particularly in regard to the fact we didn't have a meeting house or a marae from 1950 right through to 1991. So no place to share our stories, to pass them on, to practice our arts, to host people like visitors and other people to our place. These are just some images of the scale of the land loss here in Auckland. So by the close of the 1850s, even before the establishment of the Native Land Court, we had lost everything except for the Orakei block, which is out in the east, in the green block there out in East Auckland. That 700-acre block was deemed an inalienable reserve, and we thought protected forever and a day, governed by 13 trustees who would manage it for and on behalf of all the descendants of Tupiriri, our ancestor. However, in time, that was quickly, the Crown changed the law and determined all the trustees were now individual owners with rights to sell and alienate. So that 700-acre block, which we thought would be saved, was then whittled down into these fractionated sections, and over time that was eventually lost as well. We had spikes in land sales during World War I, when a lot of our leadership were away fighting for the King of England. Another thing the former Super City Council did was come up with this sewage scheme. So the city was growing quickly, and it was polluting all of Hobson Bay and Official Bay down the bottom of Queen Street and so on. And so the new scheme basically said, where's the nearest Maori village, and let's go put the sewage pipe there. I think if you did a geopolitical study of sewage pipes in New Zealand, you'll find a high percentage of them are on the doorstep of a marae or land, Māori-owned land. So we were no different. We had to put up with this from 1914. So my great-grandfather, he didn't come back from World War I to a free farm. He came back to more land loss and a sewer pipe built in front of his meeting house, which is just in the middle of the bay there, Te Purua Tāmaki. So it's Hammerheads, just to get your bearings. Hammerheads restaurant is at the bottom of the picture there, the sewer pump house. Ultimately, it ended up in the last 13 acres being taken under the Public Works Act, and then the last families who refused to leave being forcibly evicted and houses pulled to the ground and burnt. So that's 1952. My granddad would have been in his late 20s at that time. So we did have a resurgence, and many of you will be well aware of the Bastion Point protest. And here's just an aerial photograph of that last eviction day, day 507. So I'm just giving you that history so you can see where we've come from. Cultural genocide, nearly collapsed, the tribe disintegrating, people moving away to other parts of the country, forgetting who they are, not wanting to be Māori because of the hurt that a lot of our people experienced at that time. But we had our people kept a toehold in there, and some protested and some didn't. We had the Conservatives in our tribe who were negotiating directly with the Crown, whilst others decided on direct action. But the net effect was of both ways of working. The activism plus the conservatism has resulted in our rebirth, really. So in 1978, which was negotiated at the end of the protest, was a return of 10 acres of land, which was some housing, state housing on Kitimuana Street. They also gave us a $200,000 debt for that as well. But anyway, we got something back. It took until 1991 when we got a decent settlement, because the Waitangi Act was retrospective back to 1840, which opened up the whole history, the whole can of worms. So what was returned then was, out of the 700 acres, was about 100 acres of the remaining Crown land in the area, and $3 million cash, which probably would have been able to buy back my great-grandparents' house on Paritai Drive, but not much else. Also came back 4 hectares of development land, and I'll show you a picture of something we've done on that. In 1996, we managed to negotiate the purchase of some CBD land, 20 hectares of the old railways land down there. So we didn't get that as a treaty settlement. That was purchased. And I guess you can see the social enterprise of our leaders. They, well, as Sir Hugh said, they didn't have 44 cents, let alone $44 million, which was the purchase price. So they went and found someone who would give them the $44 million, and we in turn would give them the first 15 years of use of that land rent-free. So that's pretty smart for an anthropologist to be able to pull a deal off like that. And it's really become our nest egg, which is what our ancestors in the 1890s had hoped for, the 700-acre Orakei block to be our nest egg. Well, this is our nest egg now. So from 1996, our leadership have been able to turn that, I guess, $3 million settlement in 1991 into now what is amassed to a $400 million commercial land estate here in Auckland. So it's pretty amazing what they've managed to achieve. That's a really bad image of our retirement village. It's the best I could do at midnight last night, ripping it off the internet. But yeah, it's pretty ugly. But it fetches the highest prices here in Auckland for apartment living, retirement apartment living. And the people there, they love being up. Obviously, there's amazing views, and they're close to our marae as well. And the old people there, they do gardening on our land. They make toys and dolls for our kohanga reo and take them across as well. So there's a lot of community engagement. That's a 20 hectare site, a land that we own down in downtown Auckland, our little nest egg there. But key to our development has been holding on to our tikanga, our values. So everything we've done the Māori way. All the title, all our lands, all our assets are held communally, as they always have been and should have been. So I don't own a share. That family doesn't own, 2/3 of an acre and so on. It's held by the tribe and managed by trustees on behalf of the tribe, which is the customary way. And I think going from a $3 million asset to $400 million asset is a shining example of the Māori way does work. Said we've had good enough governance. I think you'd all experience that. It's good enough. It is tough. We've got a whole lot of capacity building we've got to do amongst our people to be able to come onto boards and manage assets. But yeah, we've managed to do okay to date, but we can do better, of course. We currently have a no-sale policy. We don't sell any land, and that's really challenging for our corporate board. But we've managed to hold onto everything to date. Obviously, we take a very long-term view, so it was our elders thought nothing of giving 150-year leases and 15-year rent-free periods, because they, can think of the next generation. We are very low risk. We're passive landowners currently. We didn't get carried away in the last boom times of trying to, throw money at developments. We did throw away a bit of money. We learnt some lessons, some harsh lessons in the 90s, and we won't make those mistakes again. But as I mentioned, we've got to build our capacity over time to take on these assets and manage them for and on behalf of our people. So just wrapping up, where are we heading to from now into the future? As I mentioned, we're on the cusp of a big development push. So it's one thing building an asset base, then it's the next thing is how do we redistribute or reinvest that wealth back into our people, and that's currently the type of planning that we're doing at the moment. Yes, we want to keep growing our whairawa side, our corporate side, but we need to reinvest that into our whaiora side, our cultural and social development. We are integrating the best of Pākehā tax laws and governance structures, but we're blending that with our tikanga as well. So we have our trust structure, which was established in the 1890s by Paora Tūhaere and other ancestors. And so we're trying to blend the best of both worlds. One of the key principles that we're talking about as a hapu and an iwi is that we want to give hands up, not a handout. We don't want to become what Paula Bennett wants us to become, to do her job, and become the state carer. So key to that, we're looking at, I guess, what obviously everyone looks to what Ngāi Tahu have done around their whairawa incentivised savings schemes. There's the colloquial term being thrown around now, iwi saver instead of Kiwi saver. Where we might join with a financial institution and have a group Kiwi saver scheme and top that up. But the the key goal is trying to lift the financial literacy of our people so that they have more understanding about money management at a household and individual level, as well as then bring to bear more accountability to the managers who are managing the group assets, so that they come to AGMs and ask the hard questions of our leadership. We have subsidised housing schemes already. I mean, we get hammered by our people. We say we don't provide them any housing, but looking across the country, in 10 years I understand that only 10 houses have been built on papakainga across New Zealand. That was because Housing New Zealand only allocates $1.5 million per year for papakainga loan schemes, so which is 6 or 7 houses across the country a year. We've managed to build about 30 since 1992, and we offer the land at no cost. Well, in the lease agreement they have to pay $1 a year, but no one's ever paid it. But I found out because we haven't asked for the dollar. So there's that side. We can directly help out in housing. We're trying to work with Housing New Zealand and other financial institutions to try to provide finance for our people to build their homes. But no one's been able to crack it yet. So if any of you out there can, there's plenty of Māori land to build housing on. It's how do you fund these things? Currently we spend about $100,000 per annum on education grants, and we've been doing that for about 20 years. And we have to spend a hell of a lot more, and that's the discussion we're having now. Is we know that to make the biggest change in our people is long-term investment in education, because that can bring the biggest changes. But we also have our demands of the here and now that we need to address now with social issues, leaky roofs and so on, and cold houses. Te reo and our cultural revival is a big issue for us. We have probably the least competency in te reo Māori in the country. And having lost our reo probably in our great-grandparents' generation, we're probably more isolated tribes, probably their parents or grandparents who may have lost it. So we lost it in the 1950s. So that's a big area that we have to invest in, because the education system isn't investing in it. I walk around Auckland and tell stories, and Aucklanders don't know about them, and it's because we're not teaching them anywhere in our schools, and so on. And ultimately, all of those things add up to whānau water, or as Tariana would say, whānau water. She's here. So there's been a lot of talk about whānau water and what it is, but for us, as Ngāti Whatua Orakei, it's everything we do. It's our governance, it's our economic revival, it's our cultural strategies, it's our social housing, it's our education, and yes, it's about health services as well, but it's all of those things together. Hoi anō, that's the end of my kōrero, and I'd just like to thank the organisers for inviting us to participate. Kia ora.